Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us on this, what I hope will be a very lively and important discussion on the crisis in Haiti. My name is Patrick Duddy. I'm the director of Duke University's Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies, as well as an advisor on global strategy for the university. Previously, I served as both a U.S. ambassador in Latin America and also as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Caribbean. I'm joined today by two extraordinary experts, and I will act as a moderator for Mr. Keith Mines. He is the director of the Latin American program at the U.S. Institute of Peace. He is very accomplished and has been engaged in crisis management and also institution and indeed nation building in a long list of countries. He is also the author of Why Nation Building Matters: Political Consolidation, Building Security Forces in Economic Development and Failed and Fragile States. Our second panelist is Mr. Louis-Henri Mars. He is the founder of an important peace-building NGO in Haiti, and he comes to us today from Port-au-Prince. Our focus will be on a discussion of both current circumstances and the search for a way forward in addressing the current crisis. Let me give you just a little bit of guidance on format. I will make a very few opening remarks and then turn to Louis-Henri, who will give us a sense of circumstances on the ground, as well as a brief introduction to his and his organization's thinking at this point on the way forward. Following his remarks, I will turn to Mr. Mines, who will help us consider what some of the most urgent requirements are and the constraints on both the international community and the U.S. Government's efforts to help in the current crisis. Our program in total should last perhaps a little bit more than 1 hour. The second half of the program will be devoted to questions from all of you who are joining us today. Some questions have been sent in advance of the program, but we will also be regularly checking the Q&A function. That is how you should submit your questions, and we will do our best to capture, if not the precise language of every question, certainly the intent of every question as we move forward. I'd like to begin by noting that concern for circumstances in Haiti have become increasingly acute since the assassination of the last president. But it is also worth noting that a hurricane, an earthquake, and the COVID crisis have all served to make the crisis there even more severe. Of particular concern and widely reported in both regional and global media have been the rise and increasing potency of criminal gangs, gangs which have at times largely controlled access to the ports and consequently to relief supplies, which have been forwarded by the Friends of Haiti around the world. I have personally been contacted by any number of people working in the NGO community, including medical missionaries, who have found the chaotic and often violent circumstances on the ground in Haiti particularly intimidating, and it's my understanding that some of these organizations have in recent months been unable to deliver the services which they are prepared to deliver and have been delivering for some years. Current circumstances to me look as severe as any I can recall, and I was on the island when baby Doc fell in '86, and I worked with the international community in both the mid-90s and 2005 and 6 after both crises occasioned by former President Aristide's, first his overthrow and then his in the mid-90s and the subsequent episode in which he was forced from office in 2004. The present moment, even in that context and given that history, seems to me even more dangerous from a host of different perspectives. With that, by way of preamble, I'd like to turn to Louis-Henri Mars for a brief sort of review of circumstances on the ground and his current thinking on the way forward. Louis-Henri?
Yes, thank you, Patrick. I'm very happy to be here tonight to discuss and look together at a way forward for Haiti. And it's my pleasure to be on this call with you all, Keith, Patrick, and the public at large. Haiti has been going through another convulsion, another one again, and it's worth to look at both the present issue, but also at the deeper issues quickly that we're facing. So let me share my screen. And go here. So one of the things that we need to really believe in is that peace is possible. But we must believe. There's a lot of negative talk in Haiti and outside of Haiti about the possibility of peace. But peace is possible in Haiti if we walk deliberately towards it. Now, this is a map of the gangs of Haiti, of Port-au-Prince, basically. Then you have other gangs in the Artibonite Valley and around the country. And they basically surround the city, both to the south of the city. You cannot go south without passing in front of them. You cannot go north. You cannot go east or northeast. And they control all of the downtown area. Now, there has been a movement of retaliation of a part of the population against those gangs. That was what was called Bois-Calais movement. But actually, it happened only in neighborhoods where the gangs were not very strong. They were not like the original headquarters of those gangs. And they were mostly outside posts, lieutenants and soldiers posted in the outside of the main neighborhood. So the Martis area is still in the hands of very much of the gangs. Downtown, Cité Soleil, deep into the Croix-de-Bouquet area, and also to the east, the Kazebaoye gang with Vitelom, they still control their headquarters area. Some of the smaller groups have been eliminated, but there is a tendency again for kidnappings to come back up after about a month of a lull. And they are the gangs who control the roads down to the south and to the north have actually increased the cost of the taxes that they perceive on commercial traffic and private traffic going through to the south or to the north or to the east of the city. What is to be done? First of all, the main question that has to be asked, and that has to be asked of the powers that are running the government is the will to transform this situation. Is the will there? Is it really there? If it's there, it is possible to transform this situation. The first thing that you need to do is to have a credible threat of destruction. The PNH has to be put into a position that it can attack some of the smaller groups and turn around and create examples for the larger groups to understand that their destruction is there. If they don't believe that, they're not going to come to the negotiating table. You have to quarantine the virus, the gang virus. The issue with the kidnappings is that there are areas of the city that the police does not go into. There are sanctuaries where they bring kidnap people, and the gangs are totally comfortable in those sanctuaries. You cannot kill them for the time being. You cannot kill the virus. What do? You isolate it. You quarantine it. So this is, and not just some of the gangs, all of them need to be quarantined, because you want to bring them into a situation where they have to talk. You have to stop the flow of arms. Both the UN and the US government concede that 90% of the guns and ammunition that are restocking the gangs are coming from the United States. There has been arrests made. There has been attempts at slowing down the flow of arms, but this is an issue that has to be taken at the highest levels and that has to be dealt with so that the armament of the gangs is curtailed and they get the message that they're not going to be able to resupply as easy as they are doing it now. And then you have to provide them also with a way out. If you only give them the option either to go to jail or to die, they are not going to take, they're going to resist, and there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. So you must create a process for them, a process that they can trust for them to choose to bring down their guns.
Good.
A lot of people focus only on the gangs, but the issue is not just the gangs. The whole social pyramid has to be involved in transforming this situation. A lot of the conflicts that are happening at the levels of the communities come from interest groups at the top of the pyramid, whether it's from the private sector, but political sector, but also in the international community and in the diaspora, that are fighting through gang violence. So if the whole of the social pyramid is not involved in seeking a solution, we are not going to go very far just by focusing on the gangs. There has to be a dialogue throughout Haitian society on what is Haitian society, who's a Haitian, why is there a need to use gangs and arms to come to power, to hold to power for business purposes? The habit of using armed groups to bring people to power or to keep power has to be eradicated from the Haitian system. The gangs are only part of the issue in the neighborhoods. There is a structural violence in the neighborhoods that come from a system, practices, policies, public policies, a culture that allows a small group of people the ability to extract enormous wealth at the expense of a vast majority of people through exploitation of the economy, the national budget. There's social discrimination, limited access to education, and limited access to social services. If we do not address those issues, we will always have an issue with violence, secondary violence, individual destruction, community destruction through gangs, and national and international destruction through terrorism, civil war, coup d'etats, etc. So as we are working on the specific issue of disarming gangs, we also need to work on transforming the structural violence that exists in Haitian society.
Please.
Yeah, this is Vladimir. Yes, we need to work on the mass of people that are using guns, but we also need to focus on the individual. Vladimir is a young man that went through a process of trauma healing. He learned about trauma healing, and then he was attacked in a vengeance mode because he was in conflict with another boy. Because of his training, he chose not to retaliate anymore. And he decided that the conflict was going to stop there. He's part of our processes. He lives in a neighborhood that has a lot of violence, and is an agent of change and transformation in that neighborhood. So we need to work with the individual as well as with groups, especially youth groups, so that they act as agents to interrupt violence in the neighborhoods and to become agents of change and models that are different than the model of the gang leader that is the model of the youth right now.
Thank you very much, Louis-Henri. I think this really gets us started in a very interesting way, and the photograph of that young man, I think helps to illustrate just how really disturbing the circumstances on the ground are. There are a number of things I hope we'll get to within the next hour.
Okay.
Certainly, there is something that is embedded in your presentation, which is your sense that Haiti needs to proceed on several different tracks, more or less simultaneously. My sense is that the international community, at least at this point, in answer to the calls by the interim government, by the president of the Dominican Republic and elsewhere, would suggest that many believe that the rule of law must be reestablished as a first step before moving on to some of the other issues. I'm not quite sure how to address that myself. What I would like to do now, in turning to Keith Mines from the U.S. Institute of Peace, is consider the question of what can the international community do? What constrains the community, and particularly what constraints does he see as limiting the response of the United States? Keith?
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'd be happy to give that a shot. I'll build a little bit on both of your previous remarks, Patrick and Louis-Henri. What I saw, I served in Haiti in the 90s, from 95 to 97, and then I've been back and forth since then. And touching it from other different jobs in Washington, most recently there a couple months ago. And what I came away with, this is a chapter of my book, and there's a nice discount code on LinkedIn. If you hit my LinkedIn site, you can get a discount on the book. So a little book sale here while I can. But one of the things that I walked away with was I never thought in the time that I was there, and it's actually gotten worse since, that we really came to terms with how far we had to go, we collectively, Haitians and the international community, to build a democratic functional society. And that was a result of a lot of things. Patrick, you mentioned it, but I mean, you had a whole 19th century of isolation and privation in Haiti. Then you had a 20th century with more isolation and Duvalier. There's a very good, I just happened to listen to it over the weekend, but a very good series of podcasts in the podcast series, Real Dictators, and it's got a 3-part series on Duvalier. But it's a reminder of how destructive he was, not only to Haitian politics and security, but to society itself, and how far he took the country down this really, really negative, even evil place. So, coming out of that only in the mid 90s, it's only been 30 years. That sounds like a long time. It's really not. In the life of a society that's recovering from what Haiti had been through, it's not very long. What I came away with, even in the mid 90s, was that Haiti would need a long-term accompaniment. And I think we get very confused about this very early. We immediately talk about invasions and interventions, and then we get excited. But it's an accompaniment by the international community that I think would needed to go on for a long time, but at a very consistent level and in a very selective and strategic areas. And I think that Louis has done a very good job of outlining a couple of those, and I'll kind of riff off of some of that, because he's got, I think, one of the really key things he identified, and I'd like to play on that a little bit as well. Why is there this need for this accompaniment? Well, if you look at all the different components of what Haiti needs, they all kind of add up to, again, something that could be helped by the international community. And some of it is a result of bad decisions by the international community, and we have to take, I think, some accountability for that. On the humanitarian side, the industrial capacity of Haiti was almost completely hollowed out by our sanctions policy pre-90s. And has never really recovered from that. On economics and trade, policy is just not something that's really come together within Haiti, but there's opportunities that have never really cohered. Government management in general is another place where I think that we often got diverted. There's a very good article in the last issue of Christianity Today. It's in the April edition, April issue. It's called What Evangelicals Owe Haiti. It's very good. It talks about the empire of NGOs that has been created in Haiti, where almost everything goes into the private sector, the NGO sector, and almost nothing into building government capacity. And as a result, the government capacity has always been weak. There's always been an issue with international coordination, never been very good, and something there's a need for that. Now, on the security system, which is even more acute, on the police, the Haitian police did well with advisors. It was something that to me was very obvious, that if there was the difference between success and failure was really just a handful of advisors, why would we not have just kept that? But there was also this question early on about the heavy force that was needed once you've exceeded the ability of the police to manage, and every country has an escalatory ladder where you can go up higher to a more robust force when it's needed. But with the disbandment of the army in the 90s, which was done for very reasonable, a very good rationale, it never really developed the capacity to keep up with what are now these very heavily armed gangs. And the prisons, again, never quite came together. The judiciary was a very long-term project. It's a very complex system that Haiti inherited, and it was always destined to have a legislative component as well as a technical component that was going to take decades to get right. Now, all this comes down, that's kind of all the technical things, but on the political side, and this is what Louis talked about that I thought was really spot on. There's this question, as I call it in my book, political consolidation. But how does a country pull together with a vision and a strategy and a sense of belonging? And that's something that I think is hard in Haiti, because there's not a natural mechanism for that. There's not a Philadelphia moment as we had. There's not a quartet as was the case in Tunisia, although that's kind of gone off the rails. There's not a Loya Jirga as there is in Afghanistan, where there's a natural way that citizens come together historically to make decisions. That's something that still has to be created in Haiti. And we've been very focused for quite a while here at USIP on the question of how to build a national dialogue, or as Louis-Henri calls it, a citizens dialogue. And I think that's spot on. It's something that doesn't now exist. And there's always a kind of impatience, like we can't wait for that. That's going to take too long. Let's just rush through yet another elite dialogue. And then the elites make the decision, nobody's involved. So that's something that I think really, and I like those slides that Louis-Henri that you showed, those were really spot on, that there's got to be a way to pull things up from the bottom into decisions. So going forward, the question of who leads, that was actually a long diversion before I answer your question, Patrick, but who leads something like this? Look, I mean, on the high end, this is a natural case again for the UN, and I understand the UN's baggage because of the cholera epidemic and because of the sexual predation, but there's a lot of things in play here, as I tried to very briefly outline. The UN is the only organization that has all of the components to do that. If it isn't to be used, then you kind of very quickly go down the path to inadequate solutions. There is a low-end solution, which is what we've been in for almost the last 2 years, of allowing for a quote-unquote Haitian solution to emerge. The problem with that is that there's no pure Haitian solution because the international community is already involved. So you can't really have it both ways, where we're saying, let's let Haitians sort this out, but oh, by the way, we've already tipped the scales in favor of the current government. The international community, I think, has to accept that it's involved already, and it needs to, to pivot with circumstances and get to a better option. So the middle grade option is something of a coalition on security, I guess, and then some kind of a political process which is supported. But those two things have to somehow be blended. And it's really tricky to do this. It's not something that's easy. It's a puzzle that's always missing a few pieces, but it's something that has been done before. And I think with a certain amount of ambition and some resources and the right people, it could be done. But those two things have to somehow be blended. Now, who's in a position to do this? Again, the UN is the natural leader. The OAS has taken a very proactive course on Haiti, and is very, very helpful right now in a lot of this. The OAS is in a very unique position, frankly, in Haiti right now. The US, I think without the US, nothing is going to work. So the US, whether components can be led by others or not, I think the US really does have to be the one that pulls together some of this. Brazil, I think, could do a lot, has done more in the past. Canada is an obvious partner, and then Chile, of course, has a unique place as well. Now, what are the restraints? The restraints are a number. There's a number of them. One is casualties. Nobody wants to take any casualties, and I think most countries, if there were to be a security accompaniment, there would be casualties this time, probably more than in the past, and I think people are simply fearful of that. I think there's a concern about the commitment. If you watch the dance between the different parties, everyone is trying to talk someone else into taking the lead, knowing that once you take the lead, you really can't get out. There's a lot of distraction right now. Ukraine, of course, the US is entering an election cycle. And there's really this sense of anti-intervention. Intervention right now on both sides of the political spectrum in the United States has got a kind of a bad name. There's a willingness in Ukraine because it's mostly about writing checks, but anything on the ground, I think, is just negative right now. So that's we can explore some of that a little bit further, but we're at a place where I think getting to that political consolidation, providing the mechanism where Haitians can make those decisions, I think really is the key, supported and buttressed immediately and in conjunction by some kind of a security reset, which will require some outside force, I think, to assist. And just one final point, the question somebody I saw in the chat already mentioned Montana. So there is this ongoing question about Montana versus December 21. I don't favor one or the other or any other options. We at USIP try to provide a neutral place to explore all of these. What I would say is that I think Montana could easily have been the solution. It could have been the way forward if it had been supported when it first came up. I think it's a little bit late now. I am quite seized, as you see from my publications, with December 21, the Accord. And the reason is because I think it does provide the architecture, if it's properly supported, to do the national dialogue-like process that is essential right now to getting the people behind a new government and providing the popular support that it will need. So I think that architecturally, December 21 is quite good. It's got issues. It would need to be leadership expanded. It needs to be resourced. There needs to be a secretariat. But if you look at all the different components of it, I think it was well designed. And I think absent something else, it's certainly something to get behind, because one of the chilling things right now is nobody knows what to get behind. What is it we're going to try to support? Thanks. Patrick, you're on mute. Patrick, you're on mute.
Louis-Henri, I wanted to come to you very quickly. I think one question that many of us have, partially because of the spotty nature of international reporting on Haiti, is who speaks for Haiti at the moment? Those associated with the government, which is barely holding on, the Montana group, those involved in the December 21 conversations, and should those of us who, if you will, are concerned and see ourselves as part of the international community and are committed and interested in seeing progress on the ground, should we understand that the Haitian people would welcome some kind of international rescue effort?
Who speaks for Haiti? The government in place has the responsibility of speaking for Haiti. The thing is that it only represents a faction in the middle of the factions that are vying for power in Haiti. It has faced off still with the Montana Accord groups. There's other groups that have come and gone in terms of their own accords, and so they just they're in a position right now of power and responsibility. Now, yes, there is a sense in Haiti that the national police needs to be backed up by some kind of international force. I believe that the job of going into the neighborhoods has to be given to the national police and not to this foreign force, but that the national police be trained and be, especially at the level of command and control. I think that there's been a big issues of command and control for the national police, and that it's our role as Haitians to take care of our own business. So for me, it would have to be in terms of technical assistance, training, and leadership training, and strategy and tactics. I believe it can be done, and there are police officers that are dedicated to their job. There are issues of corruption that can be taken care of if there's a real will to turn around the police force.
I guess, you know, my response to that is to say, on the one hand, I agree with you that needs to happen. But I wonder if it can happen before a greater degree of pacification takes place, and are the Haitian National Police in a position to work with, or do they need to work with, an international rescue force of some kind to reestablish the rule of law and to reduce criminal violence?
Yes, I believe that they are in a position to do so. It is extremely important that it's Haitians who take the lead in transforming what they are facing right now. Going into those neighborhoods needs to be done in a very, I'd say, careful way so as to not create more collateral damage. If you start killing fathers and mothers and leave the children without, parents, then you're creating the basis for more gangs to develop. It's not the right course of action. The right course of action is for those who know how to do this, the locals, take care of this situation. Now, that's the function of the National Police. And I believe also that the Army has to be rehabilitated. When you're facing people that are using cocktail Molotovs and that are searching for solutions to the armed trucks, you're going over and above what a police force is designed to do. So, you have to build the Haitian capacity to defend the population. And it's not by going in and doing the job for them that you're doing that.
Okay, thank you. I have now quite a number of questions from our viewing audience, as well as some that came in ahead of time. Louis-Henri, you and Keith have already happily managed to address some of them, but one that just came in over the transom was from Jessica Byron Reed, who asked, is there a role for regional actors like the Dominican Republic or Jamaica or Haiti or CARICOM as a whole? And Keith, if I may, I'll start with you and then move to Louis-Henri.
Yeah, so I just got to go through those quickly. The Dominican Republic is actually problematic just because of the
Right.
way they have been treating Haitians. So they're not I actually had that idea myself, and I was shut down quite quickly. They're not a good actor. They could have done more, I think, and previously, but currently they would be problematic. The rest of CARICOM, I think, is there's a lot of countries that have been calling for more support. Jamaica very early on offered to provide a police contingent. So I think different parts of the Caribbean could be helpful. Cuba, I don't think has, Cuba could be helpful on medical missions and things like that, but those are readily available from anywhere. But on the key things of putting together a political task force, a security task force, I think CARICOM absolutely needs to be involved. One of the problems, again, I would cite historically is just isolation. Haiti has traditionally been isolated. So to have this neighborhood that it is a part of, and I worked on, Patrick, as you did as well, a lot of the transitions in Eastern Europe, and it was a totally different world when there's a neighborhood that one transitions into. Haiti's never had that, and it has the United States as a very key partner, and because of the size of the diaspora here, there's a very strong association that's actually much more useful than I think, even on the informal side, people sometimes give it credit for. So it's not, it's not Albania, but it's not a country that has an easy association. So CARICOM, I think, yes, and some of the Caribbean could be helpful, again, on both the security and the political side. And then there's other regional players that could be very helpful. Chile is tremendously helpful, I think, as a partner. Brazil, not sure what role they're going to play now, but has obviously had experience in Haiti. Canada, always there. So yeah, there's a number of countries that I think would be helpful, but the Caribbean is going to have a unique role, and I think really could be quite helpful. Hard to get a decision, though. I mean, it's CARICOM's a whole bunch of different countries, and it's hard to get consensus, but absolutely a place where a lot could be done.
Louis-Henri, what is your view on the possibility of regional assistance?
Yeah, I concur with Keith's statement. I think that there are historical issues between us and the Dominican Republic that need reconciling before any direct involvement of the Dominican Republic in Haitian issues. Now, because of the number of Haitians that live in the Dominican Republic and the investments that Haitians have made in the Dominican Republic, it is clear that there's a role for them in facilitating processes to change the situation of conflict. But direct involvement with boots on the ground, it's not at all recommended. And yes, for the Caribbean to be involved because of the historical colonial past that they have experienced, which is similar, if not like the Haitian colonial past. Brazil has the same kind of background. The understanding that needs to be had is that there is extreme division, historical division in Haiti that needs to be reconciled. We are a multicultural, multi-ethnic former colony, and we have not accepted the fact that we are multicultural, multi-ethnic. The United States has been able to blend into a melting pot the various sources of its population up to a certain point. There's issues in the US also. But we in Haiti have not yet been able to do that. So people who have the same background in terms of colonial slavery are more able to understand what's going on in Haiti than people who do not have that kind of experience. And what we have to look for between us in Haiti through dialogue, through working together, through collaborating together, after rehumanizing each other, is that sense of being one community, one nation, and that all of the sources, whether it's westernized sources or from African sources, they all have value, and we need to put them together. So yes, with the help of our Caribbean friends, I think we can do that.
Well, that was a terrific response. Thank you ever so much. You know, another question that has come up, and Keith, I think you've addressed it at least in part, but it is based on something that you have written recently, which was, has the United States, in its efforts to assist in the current crisis, called on some of the leadership and the institutions in Haiti that we were investing in over the last, the United States were investing in over the last 10, 15, 20 years, certainly since the Global Fragility Act.
Yeah, the Global Fragility Act is actually an interesting development. It is an act of Congress that designates or that mandates that the U.S. government do a better job of coordinating its assistance for fragile states, of which Haiti has been named as one, I think legitimately. Haiti is a bit of an outlier in the sense that it faces a current crisis and not just a long-term crisis as some of the others do. Mozambique is one example that's in Africa, and Papua New Guinea in Asia, in the Pacific. So those are countries with kind of longer term problems. Haiti needs to address the current crisis before it even gets into the long term, but it tries to take, it does several things differently. It takes a long-term approach, a 10-year approach to helping a state that is experiencing bouts of fragility. It insists on listening to Haitian voices. I think there's been more of that recently than there has been in the past. So it's trying to drive U.S. policies from a position of listening to Haitians, and then again tries to get all elements of the U.S. government working together. So it's something that's fresh. It's something new that could be helpful. Again, I think the challenge is getting over the current crisis where there's just a reset of a political process, which right now doesn't exist. I mean, we're almost 2 years after the assassination. There's still not a popularly elected government, and frankly, there's not one on the horizon. So there's an immediate political issue that is impeded by the security issue as well. Those two have to be taken together. I think there needs to be a jolt, if you will, in both of those to get to a place where you can reset. Could I riff off a couple other questions? There was one about, wasn't the Montana group a good example of a national dialogue? And then another question about December 21. Maybe I could go back to that real quick, because I think it is really kind of one of the key areas in the political dynamic. So Montana was a much expanded accord that involved a number of organizations. So it was much broader than certainly what is the current government, and much broader than what has been in the past. But it was still somewhat limited. Again, for whatever reason, wasn't embraced by the international community, and within Haiti, it just never quite was able to do what it wanted to do, which was to govern. And then you had December 21, which was an accord by a broader and even broader array of civil society, business, and political actors, still limited, but broader perhaps than Montana. The one piece of that I would again point to, and it goes back to the security issues that Louis-Henri raised, was this concept of roundtables. And this is one key part of the architecture, which I think has not been focused on. But if it's fully resourced and developed, this December 21 Accord is supposed to roll out these roundtables, which are broad discussions among civil society on the different elements of what's needed. So on security, on education, on the economy, and so forth. Those are starting to take off, but they're really difficult to get going with the security environment. But that is the architecture that should bring together some of this. And on the security side, what it would do, this will hit another question that was in there, is start to get communities involved in their own security. And this is something that we do at USIP. If you look at our website under Justice and Security Dialogues, we have a whole program for that, where we find that communities that don't have agency and are not involved in their own security are typically unsafe. And now we've swung, from no involvement to vigilante involvement. We kind of passed right over the question of having strong, capable institutions which citizens would support. And that's not the citizens' fault. It's the fault of not having that on offer. But if I think, there were this system where citizens are involved in a dialogue with their local police, their local justice systems, and then have the agency and the ability to impact that. This is the kind of thing, again, that Louis-Henri's organization is a specialist at. That's a really, I think, important component of it. And then as security starts to reset, this goes to another question somebody asked about, how do you deal with the gangs? That's a really tricky question. On the one hand, you don't want to empower them. You don't want to do things that will leave them politically empowered, where they basically fought their way into power through, rape, violence, and all this other stuff. That's not where you want to be. It's a little bit like where the Khmer Rouge ended up in Cambodia. Sometimes you can't avoid it, but I wouldn't say we're at a point where that can't be avoided. So on the other hand, you don't want this thing to string out forever. So they've established themselves in a way they'll have to be dealt with. And some combination of counterforce and negotiation will probably be what will be needed. But again, with agency by citizens, where they have a say in what's going on, and they're not just, inactive non-agents in as things are done to them rather than with them. So that's the part of the, again, the architecture that I think still needs to be involved. And then just one final point, somebody did point out the assistance that has been given to the HNP. The HNP has gone through real bouts of effective.
HNP, by the way, you mean the Haitian
National Police, yeah. Sorry, they've gone through lots of ups and downs, but there have been plenty of times when, as one of the comments pointed out, that with international accompaniment and frankly very little, it's not like they were being supervised by foreigners, but they had accompaniment on operations and intelligence and logistics and some of the things that were helpful to them as a force. There are times when they've been quite effective and they produced a string of really good leaders. I know some of the leaders that have been in and out of the security forces, but it just hasn't been consistent. And then the current crisis is that they're just now outgunned. I mean, they just could not keep up with the heavy arms that the gangs were able to acquire, as someone else pointed out, mostly from the United States through the Dominican Republic. So there's that issue as well that needs to be dealt with as a package. But absolutely the human raw material is there. It's just a matter of structure, leadership, and things like that. And somebody pointed out salary. They're actually paid more than the average Haitian. So I mean, there's always going to be budget and salary issues, but yeah, there's a whole package that would need to go into a restored HMP. But I don't think it can be done right now without some accompaniment that would help them with this jolt of reestablished security to get back on track, and then from there, I'm sure they can handle it.
Let me, if I may, combine elements of 2 or 3 questions that have come in, and I hope I do this in a helpful way. First and foremost, do either of you think that there is a way forward for the United States to be supportive of Haitian sovereignty, and also encourage the kind of sort of broad-based international support that the current crisis seems to require? One of the questions came in, suggested or argued that I was suggesting a way forward that would undermine Haitian sovereignty, and I didn't mean to suggest that, if that's the way my remarks came across. What I'm have been looking at primarily is the sense that I have that there has been a chorus of calls for assistance, but there's no real consensus on what that assistance should look like. I was wondering if either of you has a formula for, in particular, the kind of U.S. leadership, Keith, that you said you thought was necessary for things to come together. At the same time, recognizing, as many people would insist, that our policies in the past have contributed to the current mess.
Yes, I believe that one of the issues that the U.S. can help with is the issue of mediation and facilitation of dialogue processes in Haiti. The September 21 Accord is in power. It cannot be a neutral facilitator of roundtable dialogue. It has a vested interest in keeping power, okay? So it cannot be facilitating a dialogue process. This has to be done by outside actors, civil society, Haitian civil society actors, with the backing of specialized international professionals that have been doing this over the years in different societal contexts. The context must be a Haitian-led context, but the techniques, the savoir-faire, the various tools can come from professionals in the US that have been doing that, or other countries like Ireland that we've been working with, right, at La Coulapé, for a long time. that it's a double whammy, I'd say. You have to, first of all, make sure that the national police deals with the gangs. The gangs control all of the voting blocks in Port-au-Prince and in the Artibonite Valley right now. There is a tendency to push towards elections, you know, and if these elections happen without the gangs being subdued, you're going to have more of the same that we had over the past 10 years.
Okay.
So that has to be taken care of. But in parallel, the social issues have to be addressed also, because if you only take care of the gangs and you don't take care of the social issues, then you're just, let me not say something about in the wind, but you know, you're not going anywhere. So it's a double movement, and the lessons I believe that the U.S. has learned from its past involvement in other countries like Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq is that it's the locals who know the context, who know the people, who can go under the table and find what is the real interests that are at play. Usually that does not happen. You have people from the outside that come in, that stay a weekend, that stay a week maximum, and then they go back. Okay, and they don't know they don't know deeply the context that's involved, and they've never had the time to go under the table and find out what's the problem here, what's the problem there, can we find common ground? And that takes time. It takes understanding of the context of the people, of the interests that are at play throughout the whole of the social pyramid. Not just with the politics, not just with the politicians, not just with the Haitians in Haiti, the Haitians in the diaspora, the oligarchs, the backcountry, the separation between the backcountry and the cities. All of these have to be examined in order to move forward in a sensible way. And there is a role, I believe, for the United States in the international community in providing those kinds of resources for the Haitian civil society actors that are willing to set aside their partisan perceptions and work as neutral brokers in transforming this situation.
Thank you. You know, I wanted to throw out one more question that came in from our audience. It is a really fundamental one. Louis-Henri, you touched on it in your opening remarks. The gangs are powerful. They are and have been violent. There seems to be considerable concern or even the belief that most, certainly many, but very possibly most of the weapons are coming in from the United States. Is there anything that we can do about that? Keith, perhaps you'd like to give it a shot.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I mean, part of it, I think, is it will be hard to do some of this without having our personnel on the ground. So some of this, they're either coming into the port or they're coming across the border. Again, the question of having advisors and others that could accompany and catch those things as they're coming in. There's not a whole, it's not a Mexico-like situation where there's 1 million containers a day coming across. It's a limited amount that could be searched, but it would take, I think, some people on our side to do that. On the U.S. side, there's probably more that could be done to go after those suppliers. I don't know that there's a real push for that right now. That's something that probably could be done better, to find out who is supplying them and really go after them. So it's something that they don't just get away with. There is a question, I think, about the diaspora. What can they do? And I think it's a legitimate one. That's one issue. But I think there's part of the frozenness I think we have right now is nobody's quite sure what to do. What do we get behind? And one of the things, I hate to say it, but the anti-interventionist mindset right now is so strong that I think people are able to hide behind, the Haitians don't want us to intervene, so we'll just leave it alone. And I think there's there's a bit of a chilling impact there. So even some of the lower level things that could be done, but are still a bit assertive, are being ducked. But yeah, I think mobilizing support in the United States, it's a little bit slow right now. In the 90s, if you remember, the Black Caucus was very strong on Haiti, very committed, and not always prescriptive, but just, keep the focus on Haiti, and let's collectively try to figure out, what to do and what's needed. That's not really, there's just nothing like that right now. And it's not something that one sees. And so I think there's not a political imperative to do anything. And in fact, quite the opposite. Not doing anything is probably the safest course of action. It's a bit cowardly, but it is one that you don't get in trouble for not doing anything. You get in trouble for doing something that doesn't go well.
Yeah, that is a little, it's disheartening to hear you say that on a certain level, but I understand why. We only have time for a couple more questions and comments. I do have one that's I think another pretty practical one is, what can the community that wishes to supply food and medical assistance, what can they do? Are there organizations in Haiti with which they should be working most directly? Louis-Henri, perhaps you could take that question.
Well, first of all, let me go back to the issue of the arms. Okay, I'm not saying that there's laws to be changed in the United States. I'm not saying that United States government should take on actors in the US that are legal actors, but it's something that is being repeated here in Haiti quite a bit. If it was a communist insurgency that was encircling Port-au-Prince, there would not be guns coming from the United States to refuel them. If it was an Islamist insurgency that was encircling Port-au-Prince, there would not be weapons coming from the United States to rearm them, okay? There are not 1,000 ports for those things to come through. The Dominican Republic border, there's enough hands that can be trained to seal it if there is the will to do that. And it's not gonna cost hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. There just has to be the will to get this done. Now, yes, there are organizations in Haiti that are involved in humanitarian activities. I'm not in the humanitarian side of things. I'm in the peace building side of things, and it would be very difficult for me to recommend one or another. I believe that there are networks of organizations that can be found that have the capacity to handle different needs of people who want to help out in terms of humanitarian. One of them is Food for the Poor Haiti. They handle containers and containers and containers every day of humanitarian aid. I just said I wouldn't, but I did.
Okay. It's a little after 5 now. One of our viewers has written in to say that there have been interesting points made by all of us, but he hasn't heard a plan. My sense is there isn't a plan at the moment, but I would like to invite each of you to make a couple of closing remarks. Where do we go from here? And is it a matter of coming up with a plan and then finding the money, or is it a matter of finding money and participants and then coming up with a plan?
You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Sure. No, look, I think there is the outlines of a plan already in play. I think it just needs support. I think that the plan would be for the international community, the key actors, to come together and say, enough is enough. It's time to put together with key Haitian actors a plan for progress, and that would again go in two directions. On the security side, it would be to work through the different options. And what I would do, we've recommended this, is to look at what would be needed to reset security, what can Haiti do on its own, and then look at that gap and figure out who fills it. And I don't think that's been done quite that way. And then, the gap could be filled in the minimal way possible, but I think there's a lot of options that have not been considered. I think more could be done with regional security, with private security forces. There's ways to do that. That's a whole other can of worms. But how do you reset security? And then on the political side, if the goal is a free and fair election as soon as possible, what is the projected date for that being possible, and what needs to happen to get to it? A roadmap for Haiti. And I think there's the rudiments of that between December 21, between some goodwill on Montana to join with the December 21 forces, commit to these roundtables, get Haitian society involved, and then start to go forward on those two tracks in a way that resets it. And then I think a lot of the humanitarian stuff, frankly, once the security is better, once there is a functional government, starts to get better itself. But in the meantime, you at least have the means to deliver on security. And again, the one thing I would insist on through any of this is to make sure that at the end of it, there is a capable Haitian government standing and delivering, and not just another army of NGOs that are doing all this through the private sector in a way that is not sustainable. The Haitian government has got to be supported in a way that it never has been before, and the international community needs to insist that that's where the emphasis goes, and that's the institutions that are built.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Louis-Henri?
Thank you, Keith. Yes, there are plans that have been prepared. The National Police has a strategic plan. The Disarmament Commission has a strategic plan for disarmament. Those plans need to be assessed and built on. And the national police, the issue in the neighborhoods is the fact that the national police, the justice system, the state is totally absent from the neighborhoods. That has to be taken into consideration. When you take out the gangs, are you prepared to bring in the police presence and the justice and the infrastructure that is needed to be in those neighborhoods? If not, the void is going to be filled by more gangs. So there are plans that are available, but it has to be a holistic approach. It cannot be only a security approach. It has to be an economic, it has to be a structural, it has to be a holistic approach to the Haitian situation. And we have to make sure, like Keith said, that it's a free and fair election, that the Haitian people have the opportunity to really choose who they want to lead them. As long as the neighborhoods are under the control of the armed groups, that is not going to happen. And as long as the government in place not totally sincere about transforming this situation, it's not going to happen. I hope they are.
I would like to thank both of you, our panelists, for your thoughts today and for participating in this conversation. I've learned a lot. I would also like to thank our viewing audience for joining us. I note that we still have nearly 60 people with us. To those who have joined us, if you have questions that were not addressed by any of us during the program that you would like us to revisit, please get in touch with us through the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. I wish you all a very good afternoon. Thank you again.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you.